The alarm sounded at 3 in the morning across the Luna communication base. Red lights flashed in the dark corridors as night shift workers rushed to their stations. Something was coming through the deep space receivers, something that had never happened before. Captain Jake Morrison pulled on his uniform and ran down the metal hallway. His boots echoed against the floor as he made his way to the main control room. The moon base felt cold and empty at this hour, but now it buzzed. With sudden activity, Lisa Grant stood at the main communication panel, her fingers flying across the controls. She had been working the night shift when the signal came through. Her face was pale, and her hands shook slightly as she tried to clean up the transmission. "What do we have?" Jake asked as he entered the control room. Lisa looked up at him with wide eyes. "Captain, you need to hear this. It's coming from the Kepler system, about 1,200 light-years away. The signal is weak, but it's definitely alien." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. In all his years of service, Earth had received exactly 0 messages from alien species. They knew other intelligent life existed out there, but contact had never been made. He moved closer to Lisa's station. "Play it," he said quietly. The speakers crackled with static, then a voice came through. It sounded like water flowing over rocks, musical but desperate. The translation software worked quickly to convert the alien words into English. "This is Prime Speaker Coral Husings in deep waters of the Zephrian people. We send this message to any who might hear it, though we know not if help will come. Our world dies. The Vorthok Empire has come to our peaceful home. Their ships block out our sun. Their weapons tear through our cities." Jake and Lisa exchanged glances. The voice continued, becoming more urgent. "We have heard stories of your kind humans of the world called Earth. The traitors speak of you in whispers. They say you come from a death world, a place so terrible that it breeds warriors beyond measure. They say you are predators with the faces of demons and hearts of ice. We are afraid of you, but we have no choice. Please, if you can hear this, if you have any mercy in your souls, help us. Technology, anything you desire. Just please do not let our children die." Jake stood there for a long moment, processing what he had just heard. These aliens were calling humans demons and predators. Yet they were so desperate, they were asking for help anyway. "How long until we can get this to Earth Command?" "About 4 minutes by quantum relay," Lisa replied, already working on the transmission. "Send it now. Mark it as highest priority." While Lisa sent the message to Earth, Jake listened to the alien transmission 3 more times. Each time he heard more fear in the speaker's voice. The Zephrians, whoever they were, sounded terrified not just of their attackers, but of the humans they were asking for help. 2 hours later, Jake received orders to report to Earth Command immediately. He took the next transport ship down to the planet's surface, his mind racing with questions. What were these Vorthok who were attacking the aliens? Why did other species think humans were so dangerous? Most importantly, what was Earth going to do about it? Earth Command sat in the mountains of Colorado, a massive complex buried deep underground. Jake had been there many times before, but never for something like this. Admiral Patricia Wells met him at the security checkpoint personally, which told him how serious this situation was. "I assume you've been thinking about that message during your flight down." "Yes, ma'am." "Do we know anything more about these Zephrians or the Vorthok?" Admiral Wells led him through the corridors toward the main briefing room. "Our xenobiology teams have been working all night. From what we can tell, the Zephrians are an aquatic species. Their homeworld is mostly water with small islands. They appear to be completely peaceful, with no military beyond basic defense systems." A curved table. Huge screens on the walls showed star maps and what looked like alien ship designs. "The Vorthok are different," Admiral Wells continued as they took their seats. "Every report we have suggests they're a conquest-based empire. They've enslaved at least 15 other species that we know of. They don't seem to want resources or territory. They just enjoy causing suffering." Dr. Kevin Brooks, the base's head xenopsychologist, stood up to address the room. "The most interesting part is how other species view us, according to the Zephrian message in some intercepted communications. Most aliens consider Earth a death world and humans to be natural-born killers." Jake frowned. "Why would they think that?" "Earth is apparently much more dangerous than most worlds where intelligent life develops," Dr. Brooks explained. We have predators, extreme weather, natural disasters, diseases, and countless ways to die. Most intelligent species evolved on worlds that were much safer and more peaceful. They can't understand how we survived, let alone became the dominant species on our planet. Admiral Wells activated a holographic display showing the Kepler system. The Zephrian homeworld of Aquatica is here. It would take our fastest ships about 6 weeks to reach them. The question is, do we go? The room erupted in discussion. Some officers argued that it was too dangerous to get involved in an alien war. Others said Earth had a moral duty to help innocent people being attacked. A few worried that this might be a trap of some kind. Commander Ryan Bell raised his hand. Admiral, what do we know about Zephrian technology? Are they offering us anything useful? Their water purification systems are about 50 years ahead of ours, Admiral Wells replied. Their star charts would open up huge areas of space for exploration. But the real question is whether we want to make contact with the wider galaxy this way, as warriors responding to a distress call. Jake listened to the debate for another hour. Everyone had valid points, but he kept thinking about the fear in the alien speaker's voice. Not just fear of the attackers, but fear of humans too. These people were so desperate that they were asking for help from beings they considered monsters. Finally, Admiral Wells called for quiet. I've made my decision. We're going to help them. Commander Bell, you'll lead the mission aboard the ESV Defender. Captain Morrison will serve as your first officer and diplomatic contact. Jake felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This would be humanity's first real contact with alien life, and they were going in as soldiers and protectors. Sir, Commander Bell asked, what are our rules of engagement? Protect the Zephrians and remove the Vorthok threat, Admiral Wells said firmly. But remember, we're not just representing Earth in this fight. We're showing the galaxy what humanity is really like. These aliens think we're demons. Let's prove we're the kind of demons that protect the innocent. The meeting broke up into smaller groups as plans began to form. Jake found himself wondering what they would find when they reached the Zephrian homeworld. Would the aliens be more afraid of their human rescuers than their Vorthok attackers? Would Earth's first contact with alien life begin with a war? One thing was certain, though. Somewhere out in the darkness of space, people were suffering and calling for help. And for the first time in human history, Earth was going to answer that call. 6 weeks later, the ESV Defender dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. Commander Ryan Bell stood on the bridge, looking at the view screen with growing concern. What should have been a peaceful solar system with a beautiful, blue-green world was now a battlefield. Massive alien ships hung in space around the planet, Aquatica-like dark metal spiders. They were unlike anything humans had ever seen, covered in sharp spikes and decorated with what looked like bones. Some of the ships were easily 10 times larger than the Defender. Debris from destroyed orbital stations floated between them like a graveyard of twisted metal. My God, whispered Helen Price, the tactical officer. Look at the size of those things. Captain Jake Morrison activated the ship's communication systems. This is the ESV Defender, calling any Zephrian vessels. We received your distress call. Please respond. For several minutes there was nothing but static. Then a weak signal came through, filled with the same musical voice they had heard in the original message. Human vessel. This is Prime Speaker. Peril Housings in Deep Waters. We did not think you would really come. Please, be careful. Vorthok have destroyed most of our defense stations. They will attack you. Jake looked at Commander Bell, who nodded. Prime Speaker, we're here to help. Can you establish a video connection so we can speak face-to-face? There was a long pause. You wish to show your faces? We've heard stories of your appearance. Our people are frightened of what you might look like. I understand, Jake said gently. But if we're going to help each other, we need to talk properly. Another pause. Then the main screen flickered to life. Jake heard several crew members gasp behind him. The being on the screen was nothing like what they had expected. Peril Housings in Deep Waters looked like a cross between a dolphin and an octopus. Her skin was a pale blue-green that shimmered like water. She had 4 graceful arms that moved like seaweed in a current, and her face was dominated by 2 enormous black eyes that reflected light like dark mirrors. When she saw the humans on her screen, those eyes went wide with terror. "No," she whispered, her translator making her voice sound like flowing water. "No, no, no. You have the eyes of the great hunters. You have teeth like the devourers. Tch. Are everything the traders warned us about?" Jake felt his heart sink. The alien was clearly terrified of them. He tried to keep his voice calm and gentle. "Prime Speaker, we know we look different from you, but we're here to help, not to harm you." Cor Hosings in Deep Waters seemed to struggle with herself. Ooh la la, her large eyes darted around as if looking for an escape. "Your eyes. They face forward like a predator's. And when you speak, we can see your teeth. On our world, only the most dangerous creatures have forward-facing eyes and visible teeth." Helen Price leaned forward. "Prime Speaker, we eat both plants and meat, so we have different teeth for different foods. But we don't eat other intelligent beings. We want to protect you from those who do." The aliens' forearms trembled visibly. The Vorthok call themselves the Devourers. They take pleasure in causing pain. They've been attacking our cities for 3 weeks, but they do not try to finish us quickly. They enjoy our suffering, but you look just like what they should be. Commander Bell stepped into view of the camera. "Prime Speaker, I understand your fear, but judge us by our actions, not our appearance. We traveled many light years to answer your call for help. Doesn't that tell you something about who we really are?" Coral Husings in Deep Waters was quiet for a long moment. You came all this way just because we asked for help? Even though we are strangers?" "Yes," Jake said simply, "because it was the right thing to do." The connection was interrupted by alarms on both ships. Several Vorthok vessels were moving toward them, their weapons charging with an evil red glow. "We'll have to continue this conversation later," Commander Bell said. "Right now, we need to protect your people." The screen went dark as both ships prepared for battle. But Jake could still see those huge, frightened eyes in his mind. The aliens they had come to save were more afraid of them than grateful for their help. 2 hours later, after driving off the Vorthok patrol, the humans received permission to dock with the main Zephrian city. The entire settlement was underwater, protected by a massive energy dome that kept the ocean out while allowing the inhabitants to live in air-filled spaces. Lieutenant Amy Foster led the first diplomatic team down to the alien city. She was chosen because her smaller size and softer voice were thought to be less threatening. But even she could see the fear in every alien face as they walked through the beautiful coral streets. The Zephrian city was unlike anything humans had ever imagined. The buildings seemed to grow rather than be built, made of living coral that glowed with soft colors. The aliens themselves moved with fluid grace, but whenever they saw the humans, they would quickly swim away or hide behind corners. "This is harder than I thought it would be," Amy whispered to her companion, Dr. Kevin Brooks. "They're absolutely terrified of us." Double quotes, Dr. Brooks nodded. "Look at their body language. See how they keep their arms folded in front of them. A defensive posture. And notice how they won't make eye contact? In their culture, that probably means they see us as a threat." They were led to a large chamber where several Zephrian leaders waited. Coral Husings in Deep Waters was there, along with 4 others whose names sounded like ocean currents and whale songs when translated. All of them stayed as far from the humans as possible, while still being in the same room. "Welcome to our city," Coral Husings in Deep Waters said, though her voice shook with fear. "We are grateful for your help, though we admit we do not understand why you would aid us." Amy sat down slowly, making sure her movements were calm and non-threatening. "Prime Speaker, can you tell us about the Vorthok? What do they want with your world?" Another Zephrian leader, who called himself Current Thattruns, Deep, answered. "They call themselves the Devourers, as we said before. But they do not devour food as you might think. They devour suffering. They take pleasure in watching others die slowly. They have conquered 17 other worlds, and on each one they build what they call pleasure gardens." "What are pleasure gardens?" Dr. Brooks asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. "Places where they torture the survivors of conquered worlds." Current Thattruns Deep replied, his forearms wrapping around himself. "They broadcast the screams across space as a warning to other worlds. They want us alive so we can suffer for their entertainment? Amy felt sick to her stomach. That's horrible. But why did other species refuse to help you? Coral, who sings in deep waters, looked at her with those huge black eyes. Because the Vorthok are known throughout the galaxy as unstoppable. Species that has tried to fight them has been destroyed. Most civilized worlds simply surrender when the Vorthok arrive, hoping for a quick death. But you called us anyway, Amy said. Because we heard the stories about humans, another Zephrian leader said. They say you come from a world so dangerous that it should have killed you long ago. They say you are natural predators who know nothing but violence and war. We thought, we hoped, that maybe beings so terrible might be able to fight other terrible beings. Dr. Brooks leaned forward carefully. Prime Speaker, humans are capable of violence when we need to be. We build beautiful things, create art and music. We care for our children and our elderly. Violence is just one small part of who we are. Coral, who sings in deep waters, tilted her head in a way that seemed confused. But how can you be both? How can the same being that creates beauty also destroy enemies? Because sometimes, Amy said softly, you have to fight to protect the things you love. The Zephrian leaders looked at each other, communicating in their musical language without the translators. Finally, Coral, who sings in deep waters, spoke again. We do not understand your kind, humans. You frighten us more than we can express. But the Vorthok frighten us even more, and they mean to destroy everything we hold dear. If you will help us, we will try to trust you, even though every instinct tells us to flee from your sight. Amy smiled, trying to make it as gentle as possible. That's all we ask, Prime Speaker. Just give us a chance to show you who we really are. But even as she said it, Amy could see the Zephrians flinch at the sight of her teeth. This was going to be much harder than anyone had expected. They weren't just fighting to save an alien world from conquest. They were fighting to prove that humanity could be both strong enough to defeat monsters and gentle enough to be trusted by those they protected. Outside the energy dome, the Vorthok ships continued their slow, cruel siege, waiting for the perfect moment to complete their conquest. And somewhere between the terrified aliens and the approaching enemy, Colonel Dan Murphy floated in the darkness of space, his stealth suit keeping him invisible to enemy sensors. Around him, 5 other human soldiers drifted silently toward the massive Vorthok command ship. They had been watching the enemy for 3 days now, learning their patterns and trying to understand what they were really facing. The Vorthok ship was even more horrible up close. What had looked like decorative spikes from a distance were actually the bones of different alien species, welded to the hull like trophies. Strange symbols were carved into the metal, and through the transparent sections, Don could see chambers filled with cages and torture devices. Control. This is Recon Team Alpha, Don whispered into his radio. We're approaching the target ship. Visual confirmation that this thing is as bad as we thought. Back on the Defender, Commander Bell received the transmission with growing concern. What do you see, Colonel, sir? This isn't just a warship. It's a floating prison and torture chamber. I can see hundreds of beings in cages, and they're not all Zephrians. There are at least 6 different species being held here. Wow. Through his scope, Dan watched Vorthok soldiers moving through the ship's corridors. They were tall, maybe 8 feet high, with gray skin covered in scars. Their faces looked like skulls, with deep-set red eyes and mouths full of sharp teeth. They wore armor made from the bones of their victims, and each one carried weapons. That looked more like torture devices than guns, Sergeant. Nicole Ward's voice came through the radio from another section of the ship. Colonel, you need to see what I'm looking at. There's a chamber here where they're broadcasting live torture sessions to other ships. They're not just hurting these people for fun. They're using it as psychological warfare. Don felt his stomach. Turney had seen plenty of war in his career, but this was different. This was cruelty turned into an art form. Ward, can you access their communication system? We need to know what they're planning. Working on it now, sir? While Ward worked to hack the alien computer systems, Dan continued his observation of the Vorthok crew. What he saw disturbed him even more than their appearance. These beings enjoyed their work. They laughed when their prisoners cried. They competed to see who could cause the most pain. This wasn't just war to them, it was entertainment. Got it. Colonel Ward's voice crackled through the radio. Their communications are in 17 different languages, but our translation software is picking up most of it. You're not going to like what I'm hearing. Give me the worst of it, Sergeant.
Dave.
Conquered 17 worlds so far? Each time, they keep about 10% of the population alive for their pleasure gardens. The rest are killed in public displays to terrify the next target. Sir, they have detailed files on over 200 more worlds they plan to attack after. This one. Dan closed his eyes for a moment. 200 worlds. Billions of innocent beings. There's more, Colonel. They have a file on Earth. Dan's blood went cold. What does it say? They call us the Deathworld demons. Apparently other species have been sharing stories about us. The Vorthok are actually excited about the idea of conquering Earth. They think humans would make excellent additions to their torture gardens because we're harder to break than other species. Through the ship's walls, Dan could hear the sounds of screaming. Somewhere inside that metal nightmare, innocent beings were suffering while their captors laughed. And these monsters were planning to do the same thing to Earth. Ward, download everything you can from their computers. Ship locations, battle plans, everything. Then we're getting out of here. 20 minutes later, the recon team was back on the Defender, delivering their report to Commander Bell and the senior staff. The briefing room was silent, as Dan described what they had found. The Vorthok aren't just conquerors, Dan explained. They're a species that has turned cruelty into their entire culture. Their society is built around causing pain to others. They don't want resources or territory, they want victims. Dr. Brooks studied the downloaded files on his tablet. These records show that they've been doing this for over 300 years. So they started as a normal species on their homeworld, but at some point, they decided that causing suffering was the highest form of art and entertainment. Captain Morrison looked at the tactical display showing Vorthok ship positions. How many ships are we facing? 47 combat vessels, Helen Price reported. The smallest is twice the size of the Defender. The largest could probably destroy our entire ship with one shot. Commander Bell rubbed his forehead. And they've never lost a battle. According to their records, no, Don replied. Every species they've encountered either surrendered immediately or was completely destroyed within days. They've never faced prolonged resistance. Amy Foster raised her hand. Colonel, in your observation, what do you think their weakness might be? Dan thought for a moment. They're bullies, Lieutenant. Their entire strategy is based on intimidation and the assumption that their enemies will be too terrified to fight back effectively. They expect their victims to either surrender or panic, which means they've never had to develop tactics for fighting an enemy that actually fights back. Commander Bell said slowly, Exactly, sir. Look at their ship formations. They're designed to look scary, not to be tactically effective. Their weapons are built for torture and intimidation, not for quick, clean kills. They're used to fighting enemies who are already broken by fear. Chief Engineer Ben Carter looked up from his own analysis. Their ships are also built more for comfort and intimidation than for battle efficiency. Those bone decorations and torture chambers take up space that could be used for better armor or weapons. Dr. Brooks was reading through psychological profiles of captured Vorthok soldiers. This is interesting. According to interrogation records from previous battles, individual Vorthok warriors are actually quite cowardly when separated from their group. They're pack hunters who rely on overwhelming psychological pressure, so they've never faced an enemy like humans, Amy said. What do you mean? Commander Bell asked. Amy stood up and moved to the tactical display. Sir, every species they've conquered came from safe, peaceful worlds. They've never fought beings who evolved on a dangerous planet. They've never faced predators who know how to hunt back. Dan nodded slowly. The lieutenant has a point. Aliens think they're the scariest things in the galaxy, but they've only fought prey animals. They've never fought other predators. Commander. Bell looked around the room. So what are you suggesting? We use their own tactics against them, Amy said. They rely on fear and intimidation. But what happens when they become the ones who are afraid? Through the Defender's windows, they could see the Vorthok ships continuing their slow bombardment of the Zephrian cities. The aliens were taking their time, enjoying the destruction they were causing. They had no idea that for the first time, in their 300 years of conquest, they were about to face an enemy that wouldn't run away. Major Chris Taylor, who had been quiet during most of the briefing, finally spoke up. There's something else we should consider. The Zephrians aren't the only ones watching this battle. According to the communications we've intercepted, representatives from dozens of other species are monitoring the situation. If we can defeat the Vorthok here, it might inspire other worlds to resist. And if we lose, Commander Bell asked, then the galaxy learns that even the Deathworld demons can be beaten, Taylor replied grimly, and every world out there becomes even more hopeless. Commander Bell stood up and walked to the main view screen, looking out at the enemy fleet. 47 ships against 1. Hundreds of years of unbroken victory against a species that had never fought in space before. By any reasonable measure, this should be an impossible battle, but humans had never been particularly reasonable. All right, he said finally. We're going to show these Vorthok what real predators look like. We're going to show the galaxy that bullies can be beaten no matter how big they are or how many teeth they have. In the distance, a Vorthok ship fired another shot at the Zephrian city, causing the energy dome to flicker. Somewhere inside that underwater settlement, innocent beings were hiding in fear, hoping that the strange predators from the Deathworld might actually be able to protect them. The Vorthok had spent 3 centuries teaching the galaxy to fear them. Now it was time for them to learn what fear really felt like. The attack began at dawn on the 4th day. Warlord Krexthal, leader of the Vorthok fleet, had grown tired of playing with his prey. From his massive command ship, he gave the order for a full assault on the Zephrian capital city. Vorthok warships moved into attack formation, their bone-covered hulls gleaming in the light of the alien sun. Each ship was a monument to cruelty, decorated with the remains of previous victims. The Vorthok crews were excited. Today they would finish their conquest and begin the real fun of breaking their new slaves. Commander, Bell watched the enemy fleet approach on the Defender's main screen. His ship looked tiny compared to even the smallest Vorthok vessel, but he felt no fear. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations with calm determination. These humans had spent their whole lives on a world that tried to kill them every day. A few alien bullies didn't scare them. All stations. This is the commander, Bell announced over the ship's communication system. Today we show the galaxy what humans are really made of. These Vorthok think they're predators, but they've only ever hunted sheep. Time to show them what happens when they try to hunt wolves. Lieutenant Steve Collins sat in the pilot's seat of his fighter craft, one of 12 small ships launched from the Defender. Around him, his squadron mates checked their weapons and prepared for battle. The Vorthok had sent 30 of their own fighters to intercept them, each one twice the size of the human ships. Just the way we like it. The first clash came when the fighter squadrons met in the space between the fleets. The Vorthok pilots expected the humans to scatter in terror when they saw the size difference. Instead, the human fighters dove straight into combat, their smaller size and better maneuverability. Letting them dance around their larger enemies, Collins locked onto a Vorthok fighter and fired. His weapons tore through the alien ship's armor like paper. The Vorthok had built their fighters to look scary, but they had sacrificed protection for intimidation. As his target exploded, Collins heard confused alien voices on the communication. "Channels. They're not running away," one Vorthok pilot said in panic. "Why aren't they running away?" "Because we're not prey animals," Collins muttered, as he lined up his next shot. On the main battlefield, the ESV Defender positioned itself directly between the Vorthok fleet and the planet. Commander Bell knew his ship couldn't win a straight fight against 47 enemy vessels. But he didn't need to win. He just needed to buy time. "Helen, target their command ship," Bell ordered. "Let's see how brave their warlord is when someone shoots back." The Defender's main guns opened fire on Krexthal's flagship. The Vorthok warlord had expected the human ship to try to run or hide behind the planet. Instead, it was attacking him directly. For the first time in his long career, Krexthal felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear. "All ships destroy that pest," he screamed into his communicator. "I want those Deathworld demons dead now." But the human ship was faster than the Vorthok had expected. Captain Morrison used every trick he knew to keep the defender moving, dodging between enemy ships and using their own size against them. The larger Vorthok vessels couldn't fire without hitting each other, and their formations began to break apart as they tried to chase the smaller human ship. Meanwhile, Sergeant Ward's Marine team was preparing for the most dangerous part of their mission. They were going to board a Vorthok ship and rescue the prisoners inside. Ward had handpicked her team for this job. They were all volunteers who understood they might not make it back. "Remember," she told her Marines, as they prepared to launch in their boarding pods, "these aliens have never faced real resistance before. They're used to their victims being too scared to fight. Show them what happens when they mess with humans." Boarding pods shot across space like bullets, too small and fast for the Vorthok to intercept. They slammed into the hull of a prison ship and cut through the armor with explosive charges. Ward and her team poured through the holes, their weapons ready. The Vorthok soldiers inside the ship had never seen anything like these humans. The Marines moved through the corridors like ghosts, appearing from nowhere to strike down their enemies before disappearing again. Ward's team had trained for close-quarters battle their entire careers. The Vorthok had only ever fought helpless prisoners. "Sector 7 clear," Ward reported as her team eliminated another group of guards. Moving to the prison levels, when they reached the detention area, Ward saw something that made her blood boil. Hundreds of beings from different species were crammed into tiny cages, many of them injured or dying. Some had been prisoners for years. All of them stared at the humans with a mixture of hope and terror. "It's okay," Ward said softly to a group of Zephrian children huddled in one cage. "We're here to get you out." But even as she spoke, she could see the fear in their large black eyes. To them, she'd probably looked just as scary as the Vorthok. The difference was that she was scary in their defense, not for her own entertainment. Navy medic Carol Jenkins worked quickly to treat the wounded prisoners, while Ward's team secured the area. Carol had seen plenty of battlefield injuries, but the systematic torture these beings had endured was beyond anything she had experienced. Yet she worked with calm efficiency, her gentle hands providing comfort that her predator's face couldn't. "How can you be so gentle?" asked one of the rescued aliens, a bird-like creature with broken wings. "You have the eyes of a hunter, but your touch is like a healer." Carol smiled softly. "Because protecting others is what makes us human." Back on the planet's surface, Chief Engineer Ben Carter was working with Zephrian technicians to modify their defensive systems. The peaceful aliens had never built weapons, but their shield generators could be adapted for offensive use with human technology. "You're turning our tools of protection into instruments of destruction." Ben looked up from his work. "Sometimes the best way to protect something is to destroy the thing that's trying to hurt it." The modified shield generators came online just as a group of Vorthok ships moved to attack the city directly. Instead of defensive barriers, they projected focused energy beams that cut through the enemy vessels like knives through paper. The Vorthok had expected to face helpless prey. Instead, they found their victims had grown teeth. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Martinez led a ground assault team to a Vorthok base on one of the planet's small islands. The base was where the aliens processed their prisoners before sending them to the main fleet. Martinez and his soldiers moved through the jungle with silent precision, their training on Earth's dangerous environments serving them well. The Vorthok guards at the base were not prepared for human infantry tactics. They were used to terrorizing helpless civilians, not fighting trained soldiers who knew how to use terrain and stealth to their advantage. Martinez's team hit them from 3 directions at once, overwhelming their defenses in minutes. Base secured. Martinez reported as his soldiers freed another group of prisoners, beginning evacuation of survivors. In space, the battle was turning against the Vorthok fleet. Their superior numbers meant nothing when their ships were designed for intimidation rather than combat effectiveness. The human fighter squadron had destroyed half their interceptors. The defender continued to dance between their capital ships. Striking and fading like a ghost, Warlord Krextel watched his fleet fall apart with growing panic. Nothing was going according to plan. His enemies were supposed to surrender or flee in terror. Instead, they fought like the very demons of legend, striking without mercy and showing no fear. "Retreat," he finally ordered, his voice shaking. "All ships retreat to jump distance." But Commander Bell wasn't going to let them escape that easily. "All fighters pursue the enemy. Don't let them regroup." As the Vorthok ships tried to flee, Collins and his squadron harassed them every step of the way. The aliens who had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were running away from a handful of human pilots in small fighter craft. On the communication channels, the voices of other alien species could be heard. Word of the battle was spreading across the galaxy at light speed. For the first time in 300 years, someone had made the Vorthok retreat. "The Deathworld demons are winning," one voice whispered in amazement. "They're actually beating the Devourers." But the battle wasn't over yet. Lord Krexthal still had most of his fleet intact, and his pride had been wounded. The humans had won the first round, but the real test was still to come.